In the Master Rule of All Functions lecture, we introduced the concept of a universal syntax for functions, where every one of the 480 plus functions in Excel are written the same way, with the name of the function, then open and close parentheses, within which go the variables divided by commas. And it's these variables that make the function go. Every function has a unique ability, whether that is to sum a range, find unique values in a list, or maybe give different results if a value in a cell does or doesn't meet a logical condition. But to truly unlock the potential of Excel, it's not enough to just know how to use each of these functions individually. You need to learn how to combine functions together using a concept called nesting. This technique is incredibly powerful, as it lets you take advantage of the unique properties of different functions and compound them together to create custom calculations that meet your specific needs. The good news is, as long as you remember that universal syntax that we talked about, again, name of the function, open and close parentheses, within which go the variables divided by commas, nesting functions is relatively easy. That's because, like a series of Russian dolls, every variable inside of every function can, in essence, be another function. Let's see how this works with a few simple examples which will equip you to experiment with this concept in all sorts of new and complex ways. Let's start with a simple example in a random cell on a blank sheet. There's a function called the today function we saw in the dates lecture that gives you today's date as an always updating date. It has no variable, so the syntax is just the word today and open and close parentheses. Now, there are also some other great date functions, things like the year, month, day, or even weekday functions. Each of these only have one variable, a date, although that weekday function, which returns a number corresponding to the day of the week, does have an optional return variable that changes the default of starting with Sunday as 1 to Monday as 1. Now, let's say that you wanted a cell that always showed the current month. A general rule of thumb when nesting cells is to think about the sequence you need Excel to follow, like what is the inside versus outside Russian doll? And start with the outside one and work your way in. So if we want the month to be the output, we'll start by writing the month formula with our universal syntax, equals, then the word month, then the open parentheses. Now here's where nesting comes in. You can literally write the today function inside the month function. Just put today with those open and closed parentheses as if it were its own function, and then we got to remember to put that other closed parentheses at the end. Basically, instead of a value or a cell reference, we've used a function as the variable. Excel will always calculate these functions from the inside out, meaning first, it's going to solve that today function, then put that result right into the month function, and then solve the month function. So voila, we have a single cell to house the month. I could do the same thing with any of those dates functions. We simply nest the today function inside of the date function. And you could get the current month like we have here, or we could do equals day and put the today function in there, and now we see the current day of the month. Let me demonstrate another usage with a slightly more complex function. Here I have an imaginary list of employee salaries, and I want to know how many of my employees make more than the average for all employees. There's a function called the COUNTIF function that has two variables in it, the range you want to count, and then a criteria that you might want to use to determine what to count. I want to count all the salaries that are higher than average of the rest of my salaries. So, because my output is a count, I start with the COUNTIF function. So equals, COUNTIF, and then we'll start with the open parens. Now the first variable that this function wants is the range to count. So I'll select all the salaries, and then a comma, and then the criteria, which is basically just a logic question. We'll use a logic symbol of greater than, which is above your period, and then, just like before, we're going to nest the average right into this function. So we'll write average, and then select the salary range and put that in its own parentheses. Notice now how both functions are still following their universal syntax for their respective functions. Even notice how their respective parentheses get color-coded. We've simply nested one function as a variable in the count function. Now, conceptually, this would work, but one little quirk of some of the logic functions is when you are using logic statements instead of a static value, you actually have to do a little bit of a concatenate, something we covered in the concatenate lecture. So instead of just the greater than symbol and then the average function, we need to put the greater than symbol in quotes and then use the ampersand or and symbol to combine that with the average function. So we'll do that here now. And now, as long as I've got all those parentheses in place, hit enter and ta-da! We've combined the power of the average function with the power of the COUNTIF function to count the number of salaries higher than average. Keep practicing this nested function with the thousands of applications you'll suddenly see in your spreadsheets. A good sign that you could take advantage of this nesting concept is when you find yourself making a cell or even a whole column to hold one step of a multi-step calculation, where you later refer to the answer in that first cell as a variable in another function. Now, with nesting functions, you can save that effort, simplify your sheets, and do it all in one nesting function. Enjoy!